There we go. Okay, thank you, Kim. So let me start over. Welcome everybody to the quarterly NoCo Housing Now informational event presented by the Fort Collins Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Joe Roan, and unfortunately, I'll be your moderator today. So hopefully this thing doesn't fall off the wheels. But before I get started, I'd like to send a special thanks to our financial sponsors that make these events possible, and you can see those on your screen. And Credit Union, Kaiser Permanente, and Northern Engineer are silver sponsors. And we have bronze sponsors, New Colony Apartments, Somerset Apartments, and UC Health. So thanks to all those organizations for helping make these possible. And for those of you who may be unfamiliar, let me allow me to introduce what NoCo Housing Now is. If I can get my screen to move. Not getting there. Kim, you got any ideas as to why I can't advance my screens? Oh, here we go. Let's go this way.
There you go, Joe.
Here we go. So who is NoCo Housing Now? We're a coalition of the willing, serving as Northern Colorado's leading voice for housing options and relative affordability. I mean, you can see what's on your screen. I don't need to read all that for you, but it is an organization or a coalition that has been operating for the last several years. And we try to bring folks from across the community to help us understand and share information about how we can address our housing needs in the region, and invite all of you to continue your participation and offer your insights, expertise as we move through. We do these events quarterly, and again, what we try to do is share information that all of us can use, and so invite you to weigh in where you see that, again, maybe there are topics that you would like to see covered. If there are information, or if you have information or feel there's information that's available that could be beneficial to these conversations, we welcome your volunteering that information, and you can send it directly to me. And at the end of the slideshow, we'll have contact information, not just for myself, but the website for the NoCo Housing Now, as well as the contact information for all of our panelists today. And so today we will be having a dialogue among our panelists regarding employer-assisted housing. And more on our panel in just a moment, but it seems appropriate to explain why we're even talking about this subject and why it's important. I'll allow our panelists to add their own personal perspectives, but allow me to set the stage. So under our federal tax code, the ownership of real property is heavily favored towards non-occupant investors, meaning owning a home that is rented to others holds significantly greater financial value than actually living in it as your primary residence. So for instance, investors are able to claim depreciation of the building as a method of recovering the original and subsequent capital investments, as well deducting the costs associated with the purchase, sale, maintenance, repair, and replacement of the property are also utilized to lower taxable income to an investor. A homeowner is pretty much limited to deducting mortgage interest and property taxes, and even those have strict limits, as we all are familiar with. Effectively, this means an investor will assign a higher value to a home and therefore willing to pay more than an owner-occupant. This applies whether you're looking at a single-family detached residence, a condo, or an apartment building. And additional cost drivers, as we've discussed in previous sessions, include the limited supply of both housing inventory and developable land, which is influenced by geography, topography, and particularly in our friends in mountain communities. And you'll see Rich is gloating a little bit, sitting at the base of a ski area. But zoning, land use code, availability of both material and labor, and in-migration of folks that are bringing wealth accumulated in other markets into our own all affect the cost of housing, of course. But in other words, people that are selling modest homes somewhere else, like the Bay Area, can come here and bid up the price on just about any home that you can find around here. So is it any wonder then that the price of housing, whether we're talking about mortgage payments or rent, often grows at a stronger pace than household income in most economic cycles? wages simply can't keep pace with all the inputs. It's quite a quagmire of competing influence that can make it extremely difficult to attract and retain a highly effective workforce for both the private and the public sectors of our economy. Again, our panelists will speak to this with far more conviction than I. And today we are honored to be joined by a panel of employers who have agreed to share their experience in addressing this issue. Some are new to the game, others have been at it for a while, but we're also joined by a couple of organizations that have developed tools to help alleviate some of the challenges in this space. So let me just introduce our panel, and we'll have them share their words in just a few moments, but I'm pleased to welcome Kyle Archer, who is the CFO and owner of Elevated Inc., the largest franchisor of Cheba Hut. From Pitkin County, we have Deputy County Manager Rich Engelhardt and the Policy and Project Manager Kara Silbernagel. And from Colorado State University, we have Brent Anderson, who's the Special Assistant to the Chancellor. University of Northern Colorado, Marshall Parks, who's the Director of Human Resources. And from Impact Development Fund, we have Megan Ferguson, who is the Deputy Executive Director, and she's also going to be supported by some other folks from her shop. And then we also have Canvas Credit Union, Sara, who is the Senior Vice President for Mortgage Lending, Andrew Martin from Mortgage, who is the Mortgage Sales Director. And I think you also have some other team members joining us today. And myself, I'm a public policy consultant that is working with the Fort Collins Chamber. And so with that, let me ask Kyle, let me go through some housekeeping though first before we get too far along. So our format today is intended to be a dialogue in which you're all invited to participate. So each panelist has been asked to provide a little background on their program, such as what benefit does your organization offer or plan to offer? How is eligibility determined, and how many employees have exercised the benefit, or how many do you intend to serve? And after introductions, the floor will be open to any questions from the audience. So to assist me in that effort, I'll ask that you utilize the raise hand feature in Zoom. That will help me keep track of the order in which you fall in the queue. And for those who are unfamiliar, at the bottom of your screen, you'll find a tab labeled Reactions. So if you click that button, you'll see another button labeled Raise Hand. And so once your question has been asked, repeat that procedure to lower your hand. And everyone not speaking is asked to keep yourself muted to limit the distraction of whatever might be going on around you. On the lower left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a button labeled Mute. Click that to unmute yourself when you're called upon, and then click it again when you are finished. Please note that the session is being recorded, which will allow you and others to access this dialogue for future reference. Note also that next week, everyone who has registered will receive a link to our website where you will find not only this recording and slide deck, but previous events and a host of other information we are making available as a library of reports, research, news articles, and other information you may find helpful that was referenced earlier. So with that, let me ask Kyle Archer to kick us off. Kyle, what can you tell us about what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So there's a couple things that Elevated Inc. has been working on, and I'll quickly just kind of give a little snapshot of the company as well, too, because I think that helps. So we have 18 restaurants. 15 of those are in Colorado, up and down the Front Range, and one in Summit County as well, too. So we have about 600 total employees, about 180, 190 of them are in Northern Colorado, so directly impacted with this group here. Some things we've done in the past up in Summit County, have really been, we've gone and leased properties and then sublease those to our employees, really just trying to find some flexibility for them to kind of come and go as needed a little bit. We can ensure housing availability for them, those kind of things. So that's, a fairly kind of a little more normal project, but most recently we are going down the path of creating an equity share down payment assistance program to promote home ownership within our company as well, too. So we're currently working with Impact Development Fund on that.
And Kyle, can you just share a little bit about how your program is going to be designed, or to the extent that you're comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the employees that we're going to try to target with as we roll this out, really, I think it targets our admin teams and our management teams to begin with. We have a goal to roll it out to as many people as possible, but I think in terms of the people that are most interested in home ownership, it's going to be that group. And then we're looking to provide a down payment assistance of up to 20% or $100,000 for each of our employees. That becomes equity share with the goal of kind of creating a fund, so to speak, that, as those employees exit the program, when they pay down or pay back that down payment assistance, those funds will have hopefully appreciated at the same rate as housing so that it can continue to help other employees as home prices continue to increase. I think that gives a little more context on it.
Thanks, Kyle. With Pitkin County, I'm really pleased that they were able to join us because I view them as a voice from the future for all of us here on the Front Range. They've been at this quite a while. So Rich and Kara, do you want to give an overview of what you're offering to your employees and maybe a little bit of the context behind what you're doing?
Sure. And I think what I'll do is have Kara go first. She does have another commitment. She may have to bounce off early, but Kara will talk a little bit about the more global. We'll certainly talk about the different programs that we're in, and then we'll focus mostly on our what we call a deed restricted program. So Kara, if you don't mind, if you want to start out, and then I'll pick up after you're done.
Good thing. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So really, I'm speaking probably a little bit more on the general community, but Joe had asked me to come and speak a little bit about our regional effort that we are starting to embark on. And it really is looking at how do we bring the private sector and public sector beyond the traditional housing authorities or other traditional structures to really address the housing, not just for workforce, but really throughout the entire continuum of housing. And really the big push has been, how do we form a nonprofit entity to become a regional mechanism to help come up with some of these creative solutions, I think, from the government sector. Joe is very kindly saying we're a voice of the future, or you could say we're the voice of the past of traditional housing and workforce housing models. And so I might say, how can we be creative and innovative? And we are working towards forming a 9 jurisdictional nonprofit entity, because what we heard from our nonprofit partners, our business partners, for better or worse, I think we can all recognize that there's momentum right now for everyone wanting to come at the table and solve these in different ways. And so we know we're not going to single-handedly build our way out of this to sustain our workforce. And we are losing our workforce in the Roaring Fork Valley very quickly and hard to retain them. And so what we're really working on is building out that nonprofit that can be a mechanism really on how we all interact up and down the valley and really create a different form of coordination that maybe has not existed to the same extent that there's momentum right now. And so we are using some funding through the state to develop that, and just are in the process of getting those 9 jurisdictions to sign on and starting to work through those articles of incorporation to look at all the differences that I'm sure you all are going to talk about today, of how can we even do a buy down program at the community level rather than just at the employer level, and how do we engage government and work together with our private sector to have those innovative solutions. So that's where we're at, and then I'll hand it back to Rich to speak more specifically on our own employees.
Great. I don't know, Joe, if you want to open it up for any kind of questions for Kara right now, or if you want me just to get into ours and then go from there.
Yeah, I think it would be easier if we get through the kind of this first piece, and then we'll open it up, and hopefully we can keep Kara around long enough to talk about that.
That sounds great. Thank you. Well, at Pitkin County, we have about 350 employees, and we've got a multitude of programs that we've embarked on. And like Kara said, Up in our area, the cost of living is just unbelievable, as you can imagine, in the Aspen area. So retaining and recruiting employment and employees is a high priority for our Board of County Commissioners. We're just so fortunate that they support employee housing programs to the extent that they have. And they continue to ask us to look for other ways of getting involved. And again, that's where on the regional basis, Sara is kind of leading that effort for us. But a little bit more specifically about Pickens County right now, we have different programs that we offer. We work with Impact Now. Joe was early on in helping us with the down payment assistance program. Excuse me. And we had an old program that we had to revamp with some changes in the law. And back in 2017 or 18, I think we had changed it, but we've got an old loan type of program. It's a down payment assistance that Impact manages for us. It's tacked on to the mortgage payment. And we have a level of $50,000 for that. But hearing what's happening on the other end, I think we need to take a look at maybe increasing that. We have four employees in the old one, 12 people in that program. The nice thing about that program is they do leave employment. They don't have to get rid of their housing. And with our deed restricted program, we have some pretty tight criteria around it that I'll talk about here in a bit. We also just recently, the board purchased a trailer park. There was some concern that there was a private developer was going to come in and scrape it and put a single family unit on that, displacing a number of our workforce. So the county had purchased that. There's, I think we've got 32 units in there and 4 cabins that we're now taking a look at how we can manage those. We also contribute to our local housing authority, Aspen Pickens County Housing Authority. It's called APSHA, and we contribute $475,000 to that program. However, they don't do development. They just manage existing housing. And so we know we can't build our way out of it, but we haven't really embarked on the development side of it. But how we have kind of tiptoed into the housing program on Pickens County side is we have what's called a deed restricted program. And the commissioners in 2017 allocated $2 million to the program. $1 million of that was dedicated to our airport staff, and the other $1 million was dedicated towards our employee base. And what the program is that the employees, if they're in good standing with us, they can seek housing, single family units on the open market. And we will contribute up to 40% of that sales price or $300,000. And just recently, as of 2 weeks ago, the Board of Commissioners opened up the boundaries. It used to be from Carbondale up to Pickens or up to Aspen. Just recently, with a number of our workforce being outside of that zone, a lot of them are down in Silt and Rifle, quite a ways away in different counties. Our board elected to go ahead and open up the boundaries to follow what is our transportation corridor with RAFTA. So it goes from Rifle now to Aspen up to Snowmass. And then they also opened up the area within that corridor in the Roaring Fork Valley to the watershed. And so they completely opened it up for availability now. So anybody qualifying within those areas now can participate. And then they also increased our participation rate with anything within Pickens County to $400,000 or 40%. So they've committed big time on this. And what this program is that the employee can find a house on the open market. They qualify our program. We will purchase a deed restriction or place a deed restriction on that unit. The employees over time on their contribution portion will get a 3% annual increase. And so they'll see a 3% gain. And at the end of time, if they are still employed with us, they end up benefiting through that portion of it. The kicker and the downside to this is that it really is an employee housing program. So once we put the deed restriction on it, we become the first right of refusal. And so we get first ownership opportunity. So we can buy those employees out at that 3% increase over time. it's proven to really be beneficial of late for the county. No doubt about it. We had, just to give you an example, we recently had an employee who was with us about a year and a half, bought a house for $850,000. I'll just do round numbers here, 800,000. We participated at 300. So they were in at 5. They took another position, and our program says that you do have to be employed. So we have the first right. So we're now buying them out at their 500 plus that 3% over a year and a half. And rather than putting it back on the market, buying it and then renting it to other employees, which we have done with 6 other units, is we're going to put this on the market because the market has increased just unbelievable here. So we are going to place it now on the market for $1.3 million. So we'll take that money and put it back into the program. And then that allows us to help another, 5 or 6 employees through the program. That's, to me, in my opinion, it's kind of the downside to it because the employee knows what they're getting into in the market. They just aren't getting the benefit of that huge gain. We are as a county, and that's what these programs are set up. So we're very upfront with the employees that if you get into this, realize that if the market takes off, you aren't going to see those gains. You're only going to get the 3% out of it. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're at. We've done 14 of these since inception. We have 8 of them that are active now. The employee has to bring 5% down as a minimum. So usually this works for employees that are moving into the area. You can't, if you're within that zone, you can't own 2 homes. So you have to sell one to be able to participate in this program. But we have 8 active now. We have bought back 6 of these, and we're renting those out now to employees. So once we buy them back, then we have the option of renting them. And we set up their rental rate based on kind of the APSHI guidelines. So that's kind of ours in a nutshell. We can certainly talk about it in more detail. And I know that there's a lot there to unpack, but would be happy to take questions as we get into it. So Joe, hopefully that explains what you were looking for from Pickens County.
No, I think that's great, but it looks like we do have some questions popping up. So I know that Kara and Kyle, you both, and Megan even are tight on time. So Kim, were there questions that came up on the chat?
Yes, Kristen Candela has a question for Rich. How long is the deed restricted?
It is restricted as long as they're in the unit. We had set it up originally. It's a fee. We're using a housing fee that's derived through development applications through our community development department. There was early talk that utilizing those fees, they had to at least stay in those for 5 years, but there's no restriction on how long they have to stay. The only criteria is that they have to be an employee in good standing with us.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, maybe we'll move to, I'm going to jump the order just a little bit so that Megan can share some information before she has to jump off. So Megan, can you just pop in real quick and share what Impact Development Fund is doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe, and thanks to the Chamber for inviting us. I'm glad to see so many names and faces here. Impact Development Fund does administer quite a few of the programs here on the list, so that's always fun to see. Just to back up a little bit, so Impact Development Fund, we are a nonprofit community development financial institution, or CDFI, and we really serve as kind of a financing mechanism, intermediary, program support, design for various programs throughout the state. So employer-assisted housing is one of them. We really look at the employer-assisted housing model or workforce housing model on 2 tracks. So our commercial financing team really looks at opportunities to support the development of affordable housing for workforce. And that could take any number of forms through pre-development financing, acquisition, rehab, things like that, again, for workforce projects throughout the state. But then really kind of tied into the folks that are speaking here today is the administration of employee homeownership programs on behalf of these employers. And so, Kyle touched on it, Pitkin touched on it. Being an employer not necessarily a lending institution, but looking at these various down payment assistance models to help facilitate homeownership, bridge the gap of down payment need, especially in high cost markets, which now the Front Range is part of that club. And so Impact Development Fund works with employers to design and implement a down payment assistance program. And that can take a number of forms. You'll hear even from the UNC group, their GHOPE program, we have forgivable down payment assistance loans of $2,500 up to the Pitkin County and Kyle's team and others that are well in excess of $100,000 in down payment assistance. That might be an equity share model or an amortized loan product with some forgiveness based on employee retention and anniversary levels that employees hit. We currently administer EHOP programs for 11 participating employers throughout the state. And we have 4 right now that are in the program design and implementation phase. So it's definitely a hot topic and something that the resort communities, as we've mentioned, have been facing this particular challenge for quite a while. It's a combination of workforce attraction and retention coupled with the high cost of housing. So we're certainly seeing that here on the Front Range as well. With that, Joe, that's really just an overview of where Impact Development Fund can help bring these resources to an implementation phase and help employers design and create something that would work for their employees. So thank you for having us.
Great. Thanks, Megan.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll jump back over, unless Kim, there's questions for Megan or Kyle.
There's not a question, just a recommendation for Impact Development Fund from Kristen Candela. She says they're great partners. So
Thank you, Kristen.
oh, I'm sorry, Joe, I got one more. Megan, how do employers pay for your services?
Oh.
Is there a blanket fee structure or how is that?
Great question. So typically we have a program implementation fee that we charge up front. And then really we look at when it's a down payment assistance model like this, we charge an origination fee at the time of closing. And that's typically covered by the borrower, by the employee, just like a normal closing cost, part of the transaction at the time they acquire the property. And then depending on the type of program, IDF also services these loans for the life of the loan. So there can be a servicing component as well, depending on whether it's a monthly pay, amortized product, or an equity share that might have deferred payments and things like that. We monitor those loans for the life of the loan.
Perfect.
Thanks.
And Joe, it looks like Julia has her hand up.
Yeah, Julia, please.
So my question was, Kyle, I appreciate the energy and effort that you guys are putting into your model, but what I heard was that doesn't probably address the lowest income people in your organization. And so I think these are the ones that are, especially single people, so at risk. It's very hard for a single person to afford housing because they don't have an other to help them cover the cost, and especially if they're a low wage earner. So anyway, question, anything you can do to help that?
Yeah, we're continuing to look at some of, like I mentioned, the program we have up in Summit County where we've leased properties and then sublease them. It doesn't necessarily make it more affordable. That's kind of a net neutral cost for us, but it does help with availability and it does help with employees that don't necessarily want a typical 12-month term. Those kind of things that can really hurt employees. That also allows them to match up with kind of, renting rooms versus the entire property, those kind of things. So that helps a lot of that, but we'll continue. I don't think home ownership is a primary goal for most of our entry-level employees right now. And so we're continuing to kind of look at what those more rental type of options are right now.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Kyle. So with that, let's move over to Brent Anderson with CSU. Brent?
You bet. Well, thank you all for having us here today. I'll give a little background as well, kind of like Kyle did. I think most of you know about CSU. You know, we have roughly 10,000 employees, and we have done an employee survey, a satisfaction survey. We do it very regularly. And housing and housing access and affordability has been moving closer and closer to the top. And in our last survey we did, it was pretty much in the top 3 most critical items for nearly all of our employees. So we have decided that we really have to do something. And what I'm going to talk about today is a lot of what we're doing is early on. So this is fantastic to hear from others of you on what's going on, how we can implement our programs a little better. Some are a little further along, and I'll explain that one a little bit. But as we look at it, just to put the context, we have 17 peer universities that we compare ourselves to across the country. Out of those 17, the Fort Collins area is the second least affordable of all of our peers. So it puts us in a unique competitive disadvantage because it is so unaffordable here. The only other place that exceeds us is our peer that's in Northern California, which you probably no surprise to anybody. But that puts us at a disadvantage. So we have created a housing programs office where we're going to put a comprehensive set of housing programs together to help both with rental and homeowner assistance. So I'll kind of lay out what we're working to do. Many of these are very early on, but we're looking to create a mortgage guarantee program. So basically to help our employees where we can help guarantee the mortgage and get the mortgage insurance waived. So for those that have to pay that mortgage insurance, that's an additional cost that makes it less affordable for those. So we're looking to put a program in place where we CSU can work with one of our great financial institution partners to help waive that mortgage insurance. We're also looking to create a matched home ownership savings account where our employees over a period of time, they're funding a savings account to help with the down payment or the costs of buying a home, and we're matching those. So finding the ability to match those. So again, helping with that aspect. We're also, because we do have a large alumni base and friends and supporters, we're working with the real estate community to find some real estate professionals that are willing to help our employees with the home purchase process and waive their fees. So again, you know, that can be depending on if the broker's on both sides of the transaction, anywhere up to 6% of the cost. So we're working to find agents that are going to be willing to help us do that without the fee there. And then we're also looking to create a rental subsidy program. Many folks, when they're renting, they can maybe afford the rent, and that's the challenge, but then they can't afford that at the very beginning, the first and last month's rent and the security deposit. So we're looking to create a program and a fund that's available for our employees that will help them with that first and last month and the security deposit and just help them get in there and get going in that rental. We're also looking to create a down payment assistance program. It's great to hear about the ones that we've already heard about today. We're looking to do that as well. It's going to be a bigger challenge. You know, ours probably won't be as large as the ones that you've heard about today, just because of the number of employees we have. You know, when we're talking 10,000 employees, it's hard for us to get in that. I love what Kyle's got of the 100,000, but for us, you know, we don't have the tens of millions to do that, but we're going to create one and see what we can do there. And then lastly, this is one you maybe have heard of. We're actually in the process of actually building our own housing. So many of you have heard about the Timberline Project. It's a project that we've partnered with Timberline Church. It's in the heart of Fort Collins. We own a parcel of land. We've owned it for a long, long period of time. We're doing a transaction where we're going to swap our parcel of land that's a little smaller but fronts a main street, so it's a little more valuable than a larger parcel of land that's right behind it. We're going to swap that with the church. We are then going to contribute that to a developer we've engaged to build 180 apartment units. And basically, we're providing the land so that they don't have to pay for the cost of the land. And then in return, with that savings of the many millions that the land is worth, we're going to get 60 or 1/3 of the apartment complex at a guaranteed discounted rental rate. And it averages to 80% AMI, but we're working with the developer. We're going to have a percentage of those units at 60% AMI rent, and then there are others at 80% AMI rent. So it's a comprehensive program. I'll kind of stop here and let others talk or go with questions, but we're trying to address the buying homes, renting homes. We're trying to do it through us constructing them, working with partners in the community. So we're trying to broadly do it. We know that we're probably going to come up a little short, just because we have so many people, and we're going to pilot a lot of these and see which ones are the most valuable to our employees and which ones are adding the most impact to them and their livelihoods. So that's where we're at with the CSU programs.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate that. It doesn't look like there's any questions right away, so let's move on to Marshall at UNC. Marshall, can you share a little bit about your program?
Absolutely. Good morning. Good morning, all. Thanks for inviting me, Joe. Appreciate having us here today. What I'm going to talk about is on a significantly smaller scale. I think we've just heard from Rich, Kara, and Brett what they've talked about. One of our recruiting advantages we always had at UNC was our affordable housing in the Greeley area, and that has now all changed. And so we're trying to find some solutions for that. The program we've had running the longest is called the G-HOPE program, which is a Greeley Home Ownership for Employees program. It's a community partnership that we started with the Greeley Urban Renewal Authority and several local employers in the area, City of Greeley, the District 6 School District, and Northern Colorado Medical Center, working together to kind of try to redevelop and redevelop the area around downtown and the area around the University of Northern Colorado campus. Joe can probably jump in anytime here. Joe was actually involved in 2016 when we began to build this, and was in on the ground floor putting this together a few years ago now. Our program is a down payment assistance program. The assistance ranging from $2,500 to $6,000 for employees, for all of the participating employees in the area. For our employees, we add another $1,500 to any UNC employee who buys in this redevelopment district. We have a donor who has generously donated the funds to encourage our faculty and staff to live in the Greeley community and not commute from other places. And so is very interested in building that sense of community here between UNC and Greeley. It takes the form of a 0% loan that's forgiven at 20% a year over 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, have complete forgiveness of the loan. It's available to all of our full-time faculty and staff. We have about 1,500 full-time faculty and staff here at UNC. Again, we've been running it now for almost 7 years. We've had I think 24 people benefit from the program so far. And we have another almost 75 in the queue. Requires some initial training and participation to become eligible for the program. And as with all of you, the issue is our availability. Our inventory is incredibly low in the redevelopment district where we offer the program. So we have a number of people lined up and just waiting. And when a house becomes available in the area, it's a free for all, like most of you experience in your communities too, I'm sure. On the rental side, we're now working on converting about 50 rental units that we own at UNC that were 50 years ago used to be our faculty on campus housing. And so we're going back in time and looking at repurposing some of those spaces into faculty and staff housing, again, back into hopefully affordable faculty and staff housing, where we can, what we're seeing and what a lot of our employees are experiencing on the rental front is just crazy increases annually that they can barely get in it the first time, and most of the larger rental areas around here are increasing 10 to 15% a year. They're seeing increases in their rents that are just making it unaffordable for them. So those are the two programs we primarily are working on here at UNC to keep our great faculty and staff.
Great, thanks, Marshall.
Mhm.
So let's move over to Sara and Andrew over at Canvas Credit Union. Can you talk a little bit about the programs that you're offering to employers?
Hi, good morning, Joe. It's just me. Well, no Andrew this morning, so he did have a conflict. Sorry about that, but I would love to. So as Joe just indicated, I am here from Canvas Credit Union, and it is at the core of our mission to help our community members afford life. As a credit union, we have the ability to be a portfolio lender, which means that we can build products specifically for a certain segment of the community, a special employer, whatever the partnership might be that we're forming in order to help serve a need. So we've been pretty unique and creative with creating mortgage products to help serve different needs over time. And through our partnership with CSU, specifically in Northern Colorado, we have done a great deal of we've been working on a lot of the things that Brett had previously indicated with their Office of Housing programs. And so we've been looking and working very closely through the development of some of those programs with them. But even before then, when our partnership with CSU specifically began, we started by offering a discounted mortgage product in which we offered a discounted interest rate and basically waived all of our lender fees in order to help any faculty and staff members at CSU be able to become homeowners, or even through refinancing, making that continue to be affordable. Through that program, we have served over 265 CSU faculty members and staff members, and to the tune of about $90 million lent out. So we're really excited about that. That obviously comes at a cost to the credit union, waiving fees and waiving some interest income by lowering the interest rates. But we believe very deeply in our partnership with the university, and no better way to help solidify that partnership by getting the word out of all of the services that we offer to the faculty and staff members that are going to see us there on campus every day. And so that has worked out very well for us, but we understand that the market has changed since 2018 when we first signed on the dotted line of that partnership, and that we need to be nimble and continue to change our offering to help serve this new need in this new market. I mean, we all know that housing prices have increased dramatically, and it not only is affordability hard, but saving for the down payment is hard. And so that's why we've been working very closely with CSU specifically to come up with some programs that can help their university faculty and staff members get into houses and retain homes on the home ownership side. That's the side that I've really been working with the university on. So working through that discounted and waived mortgage insurance program, we do currently offer CSU and truly any members of our community a no down payment mortgage already. But if any of you are very familiar with what's going on in the real estate market, it's hard to get a home under contract. And so if you're going in and bidding against several offers, probably a loan with no down payment may not be the one that is going to win out against all of the others right now. And so that's where this uniqueness and really getting creative is what we're trying to accomplish working directly with CSU at this time.
Great, thanks, Sara. So let me just, I'm gonna just ask you a quick follow-up, is that, is this a program that you would consider extending to other employers in the area, or does it, do the employers need to meet certain criteria in order for you to participate?
Yeah, such a great question, Joe. We would be open to talking to any employers in the area and seeing what we can do. So I'm not sure how familiar anyone on the call is with credit unions, but at the origin of credit unions is serving a select employer group. And so credit unions have grown to really serve communities instead of a specific employer, but we still do have partnerships with employers throughout Colorado at this time. And every employer has different needs. It might be financial education, it might be specialized products. And so we really try to work closely with each employer to understand what their needs are and see how we can better really just serve them, help their employees better afford life, and make sure that they're educated on all types of financial services. And so we would love to chat with anyone who has questions or needs and see how we can help serve. We do offer specific portfolio loan programs that we offer into the community. And then we have specific ones that we offer throughout different employers.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to just open it up to everyone on the call. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I've got some questions prepared that I'll just ask the panel. But Carol, looks like you have the floor.
I'm wondering if there are any concerted efforts or organized efforts in Northern Colorado to any kind of program for existing homeowners who might be willing to participate in some sort of little bit more altruistic resale of their houses. Obviously not investors looking to do that, but is there any, do you know what I mean? Or shall I babble on a little more?
So if I may distill your question, is there any kind of program that helps transfer a home from one person to another that may have an affinity through employment or some other connection?
I wasn't really worried about employment, but just any way for existing homeowners who are considering selling their homes to participate in an organized program of some sort where they're accepting the 3% increase rather than the 15% increase type of thing.
Yeah, I think I might kick it over to Kristen Candela to respond to that. I think I'm not aware of one, but Kristen, do you have anything you can add there?
I'm actually going to kick it over to Sue Beck-Furcus because I'm wondering if Elevation Land Trust is doing anything with this.
So thanks, Kristen, and thanks for that great question, Carol. I don't think there's anything in place today that really helps existing homeowners like avoid foreclosure or sell a restriction in their home. Like in the mountain towns, I know that they are doing that. You can sell kind of a restriction to agree to always sell to somebody who lives there, a resident restriction, which is similar, Kristen, to a land trust, where you sell the land and keep the home. And in Denver, Elevation's Community Land Trust is helping people avoid foreclosure by purchasing the land under the home, giving them the necessary capital to stay in the home for as long as they want to. But then when they do sell the home, they sell it to a qualified low-income buyer. So there are some kind of early programs out there, but I don't think we actually have anything in place here in Fort Collins. I hope that answered the question.
Well, and it prompts me to think that there could be a way to do that through Habitat for Humanity if the qualified home buyer was intended to be anyone who would qualify at a certain income level and meet our criteria. So if there wasn't a specific buyer in mind, a house could be donated to Habitat or it could be purchased at a lower value. And that would allow us to not have that $100,000 gap between what it costs to build and what it costs for someone to afford to buy it. So then we could turn around and actually sell it to the homeowner and put a deed restriction on it to restrict it for the long term. So I don't know if that answers your question or if that's kind of a workaround. We haven't done it yet, but I don't know why we couldn't. We fought back and rehabbed houses and done something similar. It would be in that same vein. Thanks, Carol. You're so innovative. I love that. I certainly know there are a lot of property owners that are actually providing their homes and doing their own deals with buyers on, at a discounted rate. They're subsidizing it themselves.
Kristen, did you have another comment of your own?
I did. I think it was a point of curiosity, really. It was related to what Sara said about competing on the market with cash buyers. And I wondered if anyone here had been using third-party bridge loans to try to bring their buyers to the table as cash buyers, so they had a better chance of competing.
We have definitely seen an increase in bridge loan activity at the credit union. And I know that there's some folks from Ent on the call. I'm sure that they've seen lots of increases in requests for their home equity product being used as a bridge loan. We definitely see that because you have to come in with the strongest possible offer, especially, I mean, in Northern Colorado, but also it's even more competitive in the Denver metro area. You also may have heard that there's companies coming to the market with very unique, lending companies coming to the market with very unique products that basically they make an all cash offer on behalf of a qualified borrower, right? And then they sell it back to the borrower within a couple days or weeks. And I've seen several companies come to the market with those programs over the last year or so.
Thanks, sir. Adam, did you have a question?
I was just also going to follow up that, yeah, just we've seen a whole lot of creative financing options, parents pulling money out of their homes, and then quite a few different random companies coming in that act as cash buyers. But it is a very interesting real estate market, and the financing uniqueness is also coming out with all the different offers we're seeing.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Adam. So let me circle back around with our panelists. I think most of you touched on this with your introduction, but can you talk a little bit about how you weighed the benefits and the costs of getting engaged in a new benefit product for your employees? I know, especially in the institutional setting, it can be a little challenging because you've got some legacy workers that are still around that maybe are resistant to having a new benefit offered to those that come behind them. But can you talk a little bit about how you weighed and managed both the benefits to the employee as well as to the institution itself or your company itself, as in what benefits that you're hoping to achieve? So
I'll jump in if you want.
Please.
So, one of the things, just a couple stats, one of the reasons that this has become such a priority is over the last 2 years, we've got the data on this, is that nearly a third of our open positions that we've been unable to fill have been because of housing affordability. We'll get a person in, they want to take the job, they love the job, but then they look at the community and their ability to live here and afford it, and we can't fill it. So there's a real cost to us of, we've got all these open positions because housing is one of the biggest barriers for us to bring these new people in. And then similarly, on the other end of the spectrum is retaining our people. We're finding that, as you know, retention is the number one priority in keeping our employees happy and enjoying it. We're finding that more and more our employees are having to live further away. They're now into longer commutes. They're in places that they don't want to be. So we just found that in order for the employee satisfaction and keeping our great employees and keeping them engaged with the university and part of the community, that those things of not being able to fill positions and retaining our people made it more than worth our while to do everything we could across the board.
Great. Rich, I'm going to ask you this, since your program's been operational for a while now. How does your organization measure success? And Marshall, I think this applies to you as well. So it's one thing to offer this benefit and fill positions that are going unmet or retaining folks, but how do your organizations measure success for the programs that you've had in operations?
Yeah, Joe, I think there's probably a couple of things here from a community standpoint. The success in our eyes is that the employee can choose a home that's on the market already. It's with challenges with developing housing. We've got very tight housing area there for even new construction. And to build, as you guys know, to build out is just unaffordable right now, unless you've got some of these really innovative projects that you guys are talking about. So it allows the employee to pick their own home. We have found in a lot of our surveys, our employees aren't really interested in kind of that apartment style living. They'd like to see a single family unit. So it gives them the opportunity to go out on the market and find it. A benefit for us is that since 2017, we have probably seen a total purchase of around $4.6 million out there our deed restricted is participated about 1.7, 1.8. So the leverage on that is about 260%. So when you talk about leveraging funds, it works out really well for us. You know, the owners or the employees can take their time in finding a house. We do offer, whenever we hire, we do offer, you know, a $500 monthly stipend to go towards, you know, towards their payment for the first 6 months, to try to help them at least get in, give them a little bit of an opportunity to kind of poke around and see if they can find some housing. The downside to that is that after that goes away, they've got that gap, and it makes it even more difficult. So we are actually talking about, you know, some kind of a housing assistance for everybody. Because I like the question about the lower income, because this deed restricted program really doesn't cater to somebody that doesn't have that down payment or that's moving into the area. So it is a little bit more challenging for the lower income employees, but we have a number of other programs that get into the APSHA. We have rental units, so we've got other opportunities there. But I think we just measure our benefit by hopefully keeping our employees longer, you know, giving them the option to do that, and knowing that just from a standpoint of infill and finding existing housing, it opens up that opportunity. So from a county's perspective, it doesn't add to our building growth, I guess, and they've tried to limit the amount of growth certainly in the Aspen area.
Great. Marshall, do you
Sure.
want to tackle that?
Yeah, I think, part of the interesting part of ours is it really predated the issues we had with affordability and access. When we began our program, real initiative was about developing the community in the area around campus and downtown, and reducing the density of rental units around the area and getting into home ownership. And so I think, the reason that we were motivated initially was we were concerned that less than half of our employees live in our community anymore. And that had gone from a high, I've been at UNC 20 years. When we first started here, almost 90% of our employees lived in the Greeley community. And now, again, as people have spoken to several times, they've had to move farther and farther out, find affordability and for other reasons. And so our primary motivation was that. And we were measuring that by annually checking and seeing, we have seen a slight uptick in people that are staying in Greeley. Part of that is because the lack of affordability in Denver and Fort Collins and some other areas. I know some of the reasons, but we've been trying to encourage that connection that you have when you are in a community, as opposed to when you're commuting to a community from a longer ways away.
Great, thank you. All right, so not seeing any other hands raised, let me throw another one out there. What has been your biggest challenges? And Kyle, maybe you could speak to this. What are some of the challenges that a private sector employer? I mean, you don't have the resources that the university or the county has. So what are the biggest challenges for a small business?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that go into this. I mean, number one, in our business, obviously, it's the financial resources is a struggle for everybody. Being in the restaurant industry, it's been a rough couple of years with the pandemic, and margins are tight. So finding from the income side has been challenging, and that's one of the particular reasons we're looking at the equity share down payment assistance program. And working towards that is because we look at that as more of a balance sheet item versus income. So like I mentioned before, the goal is to kind of create something that's sustainable, where it's not something that we have to keep feeding all the time. And so if we can, the equity share appreciation allows that to happen. That solves one of those challenges. I think Megan had mentioned, Megan from Impact Development Fund had mentioned that us not being a lender is a big challenge. We don't have the legal ability to create the loan program that we need to, and then certainly the know-how as well too. And so partnering with someone like IDF is a huge help, and they've been a great partner to work with so far. But overall, it's I think Brett had mentioned that where this really stemmed from us was our engagement surveys and kind of the biggest challenges that our employees face. And we addressed the top ones already with working to create living wages for all of our employees. Then physical and mental wellness came after that, and then retirement, and then housing were some of the biggest challenges. So we've just kind of tackled those one by one to go after, but it also creates an interesting relationship with your employees. It's more than the typical employer relationship when you start to provide housing, whether that's leased housing or you become a lender to them or those kind of things too. And so we've had to work through some of that as well too, just what that relationship will entail in the future.
Great, thank you. So I want to maybe throw this to Marshall and Rich and Brent. I think CSU has also been providing rental housing. So I think one of the curious dilemmas that I've run into in the past is when employers want to talk about providing housing, especially where it relates to rental housing, or if it's a home ownership, if it's all within the same neighborhood. So Brett, like you're referring to with your Timberline project, do you get any pushback from employees that say, I want affordability, but I don't want to live with the people I work with? Does that present a challenge?
So I think that's the reason we did this development. Well, two reasons we did the development the way we did is it's not 100% CSU complex. So it's 180 units, of which CSU will be 60 and the community will have 120. So we did that very intentionally. So it's not feels like, gee, I work with these people, I live with these people. It was a good mix. And then the second thing we did it a little bit from an altruistic standpoint is we wanted to help the community, not just CSU. So with us donating or providing the land, we're able to lower the cost. So our developer, even on the 120 units, at the moment, the pro forma is showing that we'll be providing those units at a reduction to the market rate as well. So the 120 community members should also get a discount, but that is exactly why we did that, Joe, is to avoid the stigma of 100% employee housing.
Yeah, I appreciate you addressing that. Rich, what about you? Do you get pushback from your employees?
Well, we don't really have any units that are all 100% either. I mean, it's, our rental units are dispersed throughout the area. Even the ABSHA program, it's out there for the entire community. The city of Aspen has some housing units that they have a number of employees in, but they're spread out throughout the area too. So we just don't experience that, Joe. And I think up here, I think people would rather live by somebody they work with because they have housing. I mean, it is that difficult to find it. So I think that it's the lesser of two evils, maybe. I don't know.
Marshall, do you ever run into that?
And I think that's exactly what our discussions are like right now too. I think the just desperate need for affordable, available rentals is overcoming those initial concerns. And the other piece, I mean, it is messy and complicated to be both someone's employer and their landlord. And so putting the right things in place for that and setting up a 501c3 to manage that and the ways we're working through how we're going to do that, because we've certainly have some people that we have been doing that with for years on a one-off basis, and that gets messy quickly if something doesn't work. So we're trying to build the right way to clarify those two different relationships.
Great. Well, I think that's a good segue to a strategy that's been put out there that maybe a benefit just for consideration, where because primarily what we've been talking about today is ownership, but there's other strategies that if I can get my screen to work right, there are other strategies for addressing it from the rental side. And I guess I'm just going to stop. There we go. Hold on. There we go. So this is a model that maybe is something that smaller employers as well as larger employers might define some partnership to mutually address some of these issues where again, you've heard where Kyle's organization and the university are putting in large, and the county putting in large amounts towards down payment assistance, but then having to utilize land that they own to provide any kind of rental. And so I just wanted to throw this out there, again, just kind of dovetailing on Marshall's point, that it is challenging to be both the employer and landlord and present some additional challenges there. And so I thought I would share this with the group and hopefully elicit some conversation around this, where you would have a consortium, if you will, of employers, could be private or public or quasi, and where they all contribute towards the acquisition or development of a multifamily rental opportunity for their employees, where they again develop this partnership that then actually acts as a buffer between the employers and their employees and their housing. But it's a way for, again, smaller investments perhaps to be combined into a larger project. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just wanted to put it up here for your consideration. And so you might have employers that, again, kind of pool their funds, acquire or develop a property, and then again, have a third party actually act as the intermediary that is the owner, manager, property manager, the asset manager, because that's a different class, just taking care of the building itself, not necessarily taking care of leaky pipes and neighbor problems, but creating that buffer. But what it does, though, is it allows the employers to participate and secure housing that they can make available to their employees. And in fact, it also allows each of the employers to establish what they would charge for rent to their employees. Now, clearly, there would be debt service and other requirements for maintaining the property that would have to come from rental income, but the employer itself could further subsidize the rent to get it below market. Or it could be, as Kyle alluded to, what they're doing in the mountain communities, where it's really more a matter of availability. So each participating employer can establish what their primary objective is. The interesting side of this, and this goes back to one of the points I made before, is that all the tax benefits of ownership of the multifamily property would then flow back up to each of the employers. So they would be able to take advantage of those tax advantages that an investor does, but that would be essentially used to help justify the subsidy of housing for their employees. And so, again, I just wanted to bring this up to help the audience understand that it isn't just about down payment assistance and mortgages and trying to, again, get a mortgage accepted from a seller. So again, just throwing this out as fodder for further consideration. If anybody has any questions, comments about this, and then we'll move back on to questions from our panel. And with that, I'm not seeing anything. So let me I'll stop sharing this. Again, this will be available in the link that you'll receive next week from our office. But let me ask you this, though, from our panel, especially those who have done employee surveys. How important is home ownership to your employees? And I think, Kyle, you alluded to it with some of your employees, that's not on their radar, but others on the panel, Marshall, Brett, Rich, I mean, where does ownership fall in that pecking order? Is it just any housing that's your employees are looking for, or are they looking for specific opportunities? Brett?
So in our survey, and again, we did survey the entire employee base, and I think we received about 2,100 replies, so a decent number. And of those, it was very interesting, is more than 70% are interested in home ownership, not rentals. We found that about 30%, a little bit less than 30, wanted rentals, or they realized rentals is probably where they were at. But across our income spectrum, we found people saying home ownership is incredibly important. It's what they want. It's an ability for them to have wealth creation in some aspects. So it was overwhelming even compared to the rental aspect for us.
Interesting, interesting. Rich?
Yeah, I might, I hear you, Brett, that whenever we did our survey, we found that about 70% already had some home ownership. And again, that they were, from our recruiting standpoint, we try to look for those that are in the area that have the skill sets that we can hire from, that already have some form of home ownership or ties to the community. But those that didn't, absolutely would love to see home ownership. And I think what's happened is that with this market, they've been booted out of their rental into another rental. That is, they're kicked out because people are just selling them. They're selling houses on the open market because the gain is just so large here right now. So I think people are tired of making those moves, and we really do have committed employees where they do want to settle in and you know, be a part of the organization for the long haul. And it's very difficult if they're constantly renting and trying to make that move. So I see the same thing, Brett. We do have an overwhelming desire for home ownership.
Marshall, did you have something you want to add there?
Certainly consistent here. And I think much like Brett mentioned, we saw no difference when we stratified it for income, for age. There was almost no difference. There is just an interest in building equity. And the only people who are really looking to rent were making some calculation that they really legitimately have no option to buy. It wasn't a desire to rent. It was a necessity to rent. So, I mean, that's the same feedback that we've gotten from our folks too. They are desperately wanting to participate in the building of equity, that they are just unable to that generational wealth changing kinds of activities that they just can't participate in.
Great. So Kyle, let me throw it back to you though. So did you see a real stratification of who was interested in ownership versus who was interested in renting?
Yeah, I think you just have, when you understand our workforce, you know, by large, the entry level of our workforce is under 22 years old. And a lot of them are college students. And so home ownership is not really on their radar. It's more about, how can I find a bed that's affordable to sleep on tonight, kind of situation. And so when I referenced that before, that's more what I was talking about, is a good portion of our group is like that. When we start to look at people that have been with us for a while, or in those kind of middle management and admin positions, it definitely echoes what everybody else is talking about here, that you know, there is the desire for ownership for stability reasons, for wealth generation, those kind of different things as well too. So it really kind of is segmented depending on just where our employees are at and kind of life stages and those things as well.
Yeah, very understandable. Very understandable. Again, I want to just make sure I'm not ignoring anybody. If there's, because I have not been keeping as close an eye on the chat as I probably should. But are there any other comments that folks want to offer before I keep going?
Joe, Carol just added to the chat. Carol, do you want to just get on and say what you wrote here?
Maybe I could just read it and I won't stumble around so
there
much. I was, as I'm listening, it occurs to me that it seems like the deed restricted or employer attached home ownership programs negate the equity building that we're talking about if they stay in the market when they either have to or want to move from that home, unless I'm missing some one of the programs that actually doesn't that does allow for the type of appreciation that we're seeing in the market at large.
You know, Joe, I can maybe respond to that. You're absolutely
Please.
right. That's one of the challenges with the program, and it, from my standpoint of whenever we go to buy back the home at the 3% and we can turn around and sell it, you know, for 30% gain, it's just it just doesn't feel right, to be honest with you.
Well, except that you're reinvesting those gains in a program that's housing more people. So I think you can sleep better at night knowing that. But
we are. Yeah, it's certainly, if I put on my organizational hat, it's unbeliably great. If I'm an employee, you know, I'm just not getting that. But they do gain with the fact that if we put $300,000 or $400,000, reduce their mortgage payment, they can put that money into the bank. You know, they can, if they can keep that that mortgage payment down. One of the things we get a little nervous about is that they take that value and then they buy up utilizing that. And so their mortgage payments are still high. We really highly discourage that. We try to keep it down so that they can at least see that value and put that money into the bank if they can make that work. So, but it's a challenge with ours, but we certainly see we can help more employees. And ours is set up as you've got to be in good standing with us. And I've heard some of the panelists talk about that relationship. That's really difficult. You know, you've got an employee that's not performing very well, and if they're tied to our housing program, it even makes it more difficult. And so that relationship is tough.
Yeah, we have that conversation all the time about healthcare as well. But but it's not to negate the value of stable housing as compared to being booted out every time there's a potential for a rent increase by the landlord, et cetera. I'm not negating that these programs are great. I just, if we can ever figure out how to implement one, I want to be straightforward with people about the equity situation.
Yeah, and I would certainly be interested if there's ideas out there on how to do it. You know, maybe they've got to be in for a number of years and they can buy out that portion. We just don't have that in our program right now to be able to buy that out. And maybe it's something the board would entertain, but again, our focus is on employee housing. And so we're on the other side of the coin on that.
Mm-hmm.
Kristen, did you have a comment you wanted to add?
You know, I suppose I would just add, I think that we at Habitat for Humanity have done a lot of wrestling between what that balance is between sustainability as an organization and building wealth for the homeowner. And it is tipped toward a state where we're not sustainable and we don't continue to build homes if we don't keep some of that shared appreciation within Habitat. Currently, it is not shared appreciation, though there's a deed restriction on our homes. I think that what this 3% shared appreciation can address is creating that stepping stone into homeownership, which is so, you know, vastly needed and which really increases the equity and the diversity of people that are able to get into homeownership. So maybe it's not the lottery type returns of 30%, but it's something. It's a way to stop paying those increased rental payments and never get in because you're never getting that down payment. You know, it's that opening for Kyle's people that go from I'm 22, well, now I've been here 5 years. Where do I go next? I think that's just the reality of what you have to do to get people into homeownership now, because the gap is 100,000 a unit, right? And probably much more so in Pitkin and Summit, I'm sure.
Lauren, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Just kind of curious, I'm out here on the frontier end on the eastern plains of Colorado in Fort Morgan. But for the folks, and I love some of these topics that are coming up, but for the folks that are purchasing existing homes, like maybe Rich, maybe around Marshall, in those older neighborhoods, we're buying, I don't know what other term to use right now, maybe standard homes at top market prices. How and when do the improvements get made? So we get somebody into a home maxed out at their monthly payment, but maybe it needs, you know, gutters or roofs or whatever. And in these competitive markets, you're not going to argue those when you're, you know, bidding against other folks. So where do you find money to get those improvements done?
Marshall, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because it isn't necessarily tied into your program, or maybe JR can jump in here, but it probably involves partnerships, right?
Yeah, we absolutely. And I suspect, Joe, you probably remember some of the partnerships we have with Downtown Development Authority, some other places in Greeley that offer some low and no interest loans for just what you're talking about, Lauren, where we can help support the ability to do some of that work, because it is challenging. What is happening, most of the people that are able to buy in our area are purchasing a rental that looks like it's been a rental, and there is some significant work to do to make it to bring it up to a standard that they're comfortable with, and they're overpaying for it in the first place and have no money left. So we have a couple of local programs that we've worked with in the community to try to help with that, but it is absolutely a challenge.
Great. Thanks. Kristen, did you have another comment, or Jennifer, you have a question? You have your hands up.
I have one hand up, Joe, one hand.
Oh.
Thank you. So we have that same challenge here in Gunnison County. We have a lot of substandard housing that is quickly moving out of the NOAA range, or the naturally occurring affordable housing. And so some of our jurisdictions with some dedicated funds through taxing measures have set aside money to mimic the Vails in Deed program, which is we will buy a deed restriction on a property after we assess it and run it through a metric system, scoring system. But one of the things that one of the ways we're marketing that program is to let buyers know, particularly those that are buying our existing NOAAs that aren't deed restricted already, is we'll give them the money either for their down payment or for making improvements on that property when they buy it, in exchange for putting a soft deed restriction on the property. So we just launched this program, so we don't know how well it's going to be received yet. But if you can get $30,000 to $40,000, which I know it doesn't compete with Aspen. Fortunately, we don't have to have hundreds of thousands yet. But if for a lot of people who are buying these properties, they intend on it being their primary residence, because this is all they can afford. So if we can insert money into the deal for them in that manner, get the deed restriction and give them the cash they need, so that they can do some of those maintenance and deferred maintenance items on their properties and bring them up to a standard condition. They can live in them longer. They're more comfortable, more affordable, etc.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah.
So before we run out of time, I'd just like to throw one other question out to each of our panelists, that if you were starting today, what advice would you give an employer in developing your program? I'll start with you, Kyle.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us was really talking to our employees and just seeing what the real needs are. I think Brett alluded to this quite a bit as well too, but that's really what drove us in the direction of what type of assistance that we can provide. And then ultimately it was working with Impact Development Fund was the major help for us to get over the roadblocks that we were seeing with creating a program. So that was a huge resource for us.
So surround yourself with some experts.
Yeah.
Great. Marshall, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, I think from my perspective, is find partners in the community. You have people with these common interests that can surprise you with how we can support one another. And I think everything we're doing, we continue to look for community partners with shared interest on behalf of our employees.
Brett?
I'm going to go with what Kyle said. I think it's really understand what your employees need, because not every employee base is the same. There are different challenges for different groups. So truly understand where the pain points are, where the value would be for specific programs, so you can try to target them to your employees.
Rich, do you have a different perspective on that?
Well, I guess from our standpoint, the government side of it, and the fact that we collect it through development fees. And I know there's deed restricted programs out there, but I think the thing that I appreciate about ours is they went big, with it. They allocated a lot of money on the front end here. And we're talking $300,000 and $400,000 deed restricted contribution. I think, some advice would be to be clear and upfront about the program if you do the deed restricted with the employees. so that they know what they are getting into. And I like the approach that I'm hearing here, is that it is kind of a stepping stone to the future. And I think you got to have other options. If you can form a kind of a cafeteria plan for your employees to choose from, just seek out those other partners and those options and listen to them. You know, we did a survey as well, and some ideas are starting to flow out of that. We're in the process now with work from home. It's completely changed the way we're going to kind of address employment. And so our employees are creative. They've come up with a lot of great ideas, and it's just not the housing, it's childcare is just really difficult. So they're starting to come up with some great ideas. So I think others getting into it, the first step is just listen to your employees first and kind of get an idea of what they're looking at and be willing to be creative. You know, our board extended there, it's Pickens County, and we're actually purchasing these deed restrictions in Garfield and Eagle County. And so our board is very good about just not keeping it just to that jurisdiction. So that's the governmental side of it, I guess.
Great. Well, with that, I'm going to just make sure this screen is up for all of you. If there's some additional follow-up that you want to have with any of our panelists, they've graciously agreed to allow me to share their contact information and their personal phone numbers so that you can call them at any time of day. Again, I do invite you to be in touch with us through our website. You can contact me directly. That is my cell number, so you're welcome to call me. But again, I really appreciate all of our panelists today and sharing their time, their expertise, and maybe even a few secrets that that don't need to that aren't necessarily something you want at the dinner table. But at any rate, really appreciate all of our panelists today. And once again, I want to thank our sponsors that have made these sessions possible. And again, that's Kaiser Permanente, Ent Credit Union, Northern Engineering, and then New Colony Apartments, Somerset Apartments, and UC Health. They've all made this, again, this series possible. And we really invite all of you to stay engaged and be in touch with us and let us know how we can make these events more relevant for you and your circumstances that you're dealing with. And with that, Kyle, Marshall, Brett, Rich, I know Cara has already left, but Sara and Corinne, I think you're stepping in for Megan. So please extend my thanks to her, but to all of you, thank you so much. And thank all of you for participating in our conversation today.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So did you see that last question? I just happened to get invited by somebody else who sent me the invite. If I send you my contact, can I get on these future invites?
Please do.
All right. Yeah, I totally stumbled into this, and this was a great thing for me. So I appreciate it very much.
We'd love to have you participate in the future.
Super. I'm sending it now, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
Hey, Joe, do you want to push the stop recording button?
Yeah, let me do that.